Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, and joined by my co-host, as always, Brian McNichol. So just at the point, you froze. And I lost him. You're back.
I'm back. That was abrupt.
All right. All right. Well, it'll be.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. That's right. All right. So that was a little bit of a bumpy start.
First time around.
And since I'm not an expert in this, I guess I could.
I think we're ready now, man.
You're loaded for bear now, right?
I am. Let's go.
All right. Okay. Well, we're having spring is about to spring, I guess. I mean, what is it? This is the 16th. I think the official day is March 20th. It's feeling pretty good. I know that you love my little thing there about daylight savings time, and you're ready. You're ready for golf in the evening.
Yeah, like I went last night, late at night. Played till like 7:30 or 7:45 or something. It was great. It's nice out there. It was in the 70s. I guess it was in the 60s when I was actually playing. But it's time to work a full day and play 9 holes, which is, I get a lot more golf in during the time of year that applies. So
kind of
it's cool.
one of the best things about it for you, right? Is to do some work, get a round of golf in.
Yeah, keeps me sane to the extent I'm sane.
Right. Well, I mean, I think you made a comment, I think, on Facebook about this. The Senate has they were thinking about making this permanent. It
right.
has to go to
voted
the House
unanimously to make it permanently.
Yeah. So I mean, I recall. I mean, we had this. They did this once for what, a year or so, 20, 30 years ago or something like that, maybe more than that. They made it a temporary thing.
Yeah,
and then
it was the Carter. It was Carter. We were trying to deal with the energy crisis back then, right? I was trying to think of when it was. I meant to go look it up. Yeah, we've done this before, and on December 20th, around, right? So now you're going to be saying it's at 8:24 in the morning. That means, everyone will be, kids will be in their second or third class of the day before the sun comes up. So you're out there, everybody's out there in the dark, and it's not, it's not, it doesn't just go to 8:24 for one day, right? I mean, it gradually built up to being that short. So it'll be, kids will be leaving for school in the dark most of the school year under this. Right? They won't get out front. I don't know, I don't know how much big a difference that makes, but I do know that the last time we tried this, keeping it like in the winter made people angry, and they ended up changing it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's some when I get to this point in time of the year, I'm like, yeah, just having not to change the clock, twice a year is nice. But on the other hand, I understand why we do it. So You know, I mean, I've been doing it virtually all my life.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, is it that big a deal? No, I mean, you know, then you take my, you know,
Right. Why?
take my son.
It's not a big deal to change it. And most of them, most of your clocks change themselves, right?
Right.
I mean, your phone changes itself, or some the hour. You know, moved somewhere else for one day. And it's like people talking, it's like that's in your head, right? 1 hour, one day of the week, one time every 8 months or whatever is not going to upset your sleep patterns. It's just not.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, the clock I keep over here, I never changed it. So I looked over, I'm like, oh, it's right on time now.
There you go. See?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
forevermore if this becomes law.
yeah, right. Well, the thing is, I mean, I think I think there was some annoyance when I was younger before we have all these digital clocks that were automatically, you know, like their phones and stuff like that, because that meant you had to manually go around and change like every single stinking clock in your house. Now a lot of them go ahead and just update automatically, which is fine. And so
But I
it's
mean,
not,
that's a 10-minute process, right?
yeah,
Walking around your house, changing the clocks is at most a 10-minute process. I mean, that's in the winter when you have to go wind them all the way back. Now you're just bumping it forward an hour. You push the button and you go to the next one, you know? It's like that,
measured
we
over.
make up these inconveniences, right? We make up these things that hold us back and then sit and whine about it. And they're not holding you back. What's holding you back is, that mentality.
Yeah, well, I mean, just take all the time it takes us to do it through our lifetime and multiply it times how many millions of people there are in the world, and you say there's a fair amount of time, right?
Yeah, there's enough time to make a hamburger there or whatever.
Yeah. I can try to do anything with that at all. All right. So tomorrow it'll be really kind of the third week anniversary, if you want to call it, the third week since Russia invaded Ukraine. You can count the days as, if you count that day, I guess that today is really more day 21 than day 20, but that's a little more semantics. But nevertheless, it's been about 3 weeks, which is virtually 3 weeks longer than than Putin thought that he was going to get to this point in time. And
He was
it's
thinking
just
along the
continued.
lines of 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, this, there really doesn't seem to be a real definitive end in sight to this, because the Russian army seems to be bogged down. They're calling for reinforcements. They're having all kinds of problems. I mean, Putin's reputation continues to be in tatters now around the world because of the civilian targets he's hitting. I mean, you see all that news footage of all the bombed out apartments and the civilian death toll. Kids have been killed in this. There are Russian, there are kids that are Ukrainian kids that are now orphans, or there's others that are separated. I was even reading an article, I mean, there are people here in America that actually had paid people in Ukraine to be surrogates, right? For the and babies are being born, and the parents are trying to figure out, how am I going to get this kid in Ukraine under this situation? I mean, there's just one tragedy, one terrible story after another coming out of this in terms of that, and yet there's a lot of resilience and a lot of other things. I'm expecting that by my Ukrainian flag should be here today, so I'll be hanging it proudly from tonight on. But
hang it correctly with the blue side up.
That's right. You remember which side
the sky is above the land. It's like, come on, government. You can do better.
Yeah.
Right. I think I think that Putin ran into a lot more resistance than he did. That convoy that's sitting outside of Kiev, right? I'm beginning to wonder what's in those trucks, because the Russians aren't moving them. If you look at the formation, if you look at the photographs from above, you can see that it's really tightly packed, and it's almost like if one of them gets hit, they kind of want the other ones to catch fire too, for some reason. So, and I think the Ukrainians aren't really sure what to make of that convoy either. but it's just stuck in the middle of the road, and they can't really bomb it because they don't know they're letting out. We're march diplomatic forces and whatnot. One of the things that's come into pass here is, when this started, it was a given around the world that there were three superpowers, right? US, Russia, China, and you didn't want to take on any of them in any kind of war because they would kill you. So now, the Russians have been revealed as not nearly as good as we thought they were. The Americans have been revealed as feckless and directionless and not, it's now. So what does that tell the world? Well, one thing it tells, Iran, it's time to rearm and, resume seeking their objectives, which is not good for Israel. Right. And so, you're actually heading toward at the end of this conflict, potentially far more dangerous world than you have right now, because the mice are going to realize they can play now because the cats are not potent. They're not able to keep order in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing to watch what we're doing over here. I mean, we are spending or willing to send quite a bit of money, over there and trying to help them that way. We're not really doing all that much militarily. We're definitely not, we're not going to send troops into Ukraine at this standpoint. But I was watching, I don't know if you saw that press conference by Nancy Pelosi, and I don't know what it is. Every time I watch, when she tries to go on and explain almost anything, it's just like there's just synapses are just misfiring or something like that. It's a weird thing to watch her, and then to watch her try to explain the situation in Ukraine with Putin and a no-fly zone, and then she said something to the effect about about planes, but and MiGs. But Biden, didn't want to deal with the MiGs that Poland was willing, Poland wanted to run them through us and not directly. So it's like, are you guys on the same page? You talk to each other? Do you guys have any idea what's going on? It's just, what is this administration? What is this government of ours doing? Looks like we're in freeze frame again. All right, so Brian's continued to have some. Brian, you're frozen. But anyway, as I was saying, while we wait for Brian's connection to reoccur and unfreeze, so Pelosi is, she's trying, helplessly to explain the situation in Russia with Putin and Ukraine, and it was just incoherent. A large part of that, it's kind of hard to explain exactly what she was doing because I'm not sure she knew what she was doing. I really don't know what the heck is going on, with our government. Oh, looks like we lost him. So it's just me for now. But this is part of the problem, with right now is just that the war is going on, but our government is not doing a lot. I mean, we're trying to provide money, which is fine, but we're not really providing much in the way of military support beyond money and some other things. And we're going to bring Brian back on. All right, you back? Can you hear me? All right. Are you there? Okay.
So yeah, what I was going to say is that, yeah, I think
yeah, you're okay. Go ahead.
There's some disagreement apparently between the Democrats in the House and the administration on how aggressive to be about this. Democrats in the House see a lifeline here. They're not as worried about risking World War III and all this stuff as they are about, about to get wiped out in the midterms, right? They see their own bloody end, right? And so, they're trying to come up with things that might appeal to voters. So it's a stretch for the Democrats to be the strong on defense party and to like hold that pose all the way to November. But right now, they don't really have a lot of good options, right? Most of the others are not popular right now and are getting progressively less popular.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point.
I mean, no one's interested in CRT and open borders and all the stuff they came out for, and massive welfare transfers of wealth and all this. The things they talked about, Green New Deal and whatnot. Those are the political losers of 2022. And so they got to get off what they've been pushing for 2 years and find things that they can credibly push, right? That will give them some hope of winning. Because right now, I mean, it's bad for them. Even with the redistricting, they've really done a lot better than Republicans on these lawsuits and these, challenging the maps and so forth. But that's not going to save them under the current map.
Yeah. I'm actually, so there's some things there. I mean, one on this redistricting thing, I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because it was like late last night, apparently in Maryland, the court ruled that they've now moved the primary in Maryland into July from June. They've extended for the second time the filing deadline, which was originally in February and was supposed to actually be, I think the last filing was supposed to be next Wednesday or thereabouts or whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday. And they've extended that for until like April 15th while they still decide about this thing. I still think in Maryland, they're still going to get the Democrat map overall, but it does, the problems that the Democrats are having, not getting the slam dunk at the outset in Maryland, just shows you the concern about how bad, these are. I'm glad that that's happening. Like I said, my expectations are kind of low as to what the final result will be, but we certainly haven't had, the court being on the Republican side in North Carolina or New York and places like that. So this is a little bit of encouragement that, yeah, you can fight this. You may not win every battle, but you can fight these terribly gerrymandered, these things that the Democrats are trying to run roughshod over the process. Because as you have said many times, elections have consequences. Republicans control, the maps in a lot of places, but then it gets thrown to the courts or these, commissions, and everybody keeps punting the ball around. And then, a politically motivated court will then go with the party in power, that their favoritism, like North Carolina, their Supreme Court, they're majority Democrat, I believe. So, they've been pushing back on that. So we're seeing those kinds of things as an election issue. Yeah, the Democrats strong on defense, unless you're Sam Nunn or Henry, Scoop Jackson or something like that, you don't have a lot of Democrat heroes for defense, right? People who really were big on defense. But this is a good issue for them. This is a good issue. Americans,
it's better than what they got,
Right. I mean, we don't. None of us want this war to have happened. None of us want this invasion to have occurred. But we're having to live with it. So we have to deal with the reality that it's there, and therefore, if you're Joe Biden, if you're the Democrats, you're like, okay, as you said, I mean, what do they have to run on? They have nothing. You mentioned the Green New Deal. We'll talk about inflation a little bit. We've talked about a lot of these things over and over because they continue to stay out there front and center, but they don't have any real winning issues. If you show that you're strong and you're going to support the Ukrainians in this, this blatant, attack by Russia on Ukraine, you can push your numbers up. I mean, this is a chance for Biden to push his numbers up, if he takes a strong stance. But this overall thing about we might initiate World War III and the Russians might do nukes. It's like, how do we know that's really going to happen? I mean, they have kowtowed to the Russians at this point in time, and we have not shown the strength that we should be showing on this, and said, we got to push back on this guy. And I think Americans would think a lot better of Democrats, would think a lot better of Joe Biden if he was stronger than having Nancy Pelosi trying to discuss, jets and saying, I'm not a military strategist, but this, and, all these confusing things that she's doing. And in the Biden administration, not really having a cohesive strategy on this, and things like this. So it's they're blowing an opportunity to give them a chance to do better, in the elections in November. Not
their thing is like they're to the point where it's very hard for them to look normal, right? I mean, when you're when you're down fighting, a bill that doesn't let them talk about, gay sex to 2-year-olds, right? When you're down there fighting that, you don't look like you're with the common people, right? You look like you're with the elites. And there's something where you can look like you're with the common people. Americans understand, Americans' general understanding of foreign policy is that, the Russians attacking their neighbors unprovoked is bad, and that we as Americans stand against that. Right? And you have, a lot of people on the right are like, well, Ukraine, they're not saints either, and all that. They got attacked unprovoked. No one's saints, right? None of these countries are saints, but they weren't bothering anybody, and they got attacked. I mean, that's the point. And they got attacked by a country with a history of attacking neighbors and non-neighbors and imposing their will and their government and so forth on those people. And so that's what's happening. It's not people trying to dress it up with all this stuff. That's what's going on. That's what we should be responding to. And so far, the Democrats at least understand what we should be responding to. We're over here arguing about who the good guys and the bad guys are, right? That's not resonating with the American people. What, Tucker Carlson is talking about every night is not resonating with the American people, right? So, they're trying to make a case, and I understand that, but that's not the case. And you're not going to prevail politically about that. I want to go back to one thing you said. You were talking about Maryland and the gerrymandering. I don't know. It won't make any difference. It won't help Andy Harris, who I guess they've got him in the gun sights now, and it'll be hard for him to escape. But Biden went underwater in Maryland in the last week or two. He is now below majority support in Maryland, which is like the second or third most Democrat state in the nation. So that tells you the collapse is near total.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got, the last reports I saw this morning were, over 3 million Ukrainians now have fled the country, and they most of them are going in, they go right into Poland. Poland has been they've been willing to accept them, but Poland is now, their cities are overwhelmed. I mean, they're bursting at the seams with all these people. I mean, all of a sudden you get 3 million people. Where do you put them all? And it's a struggle to do all the things they're doing. There's no good look for Putin. There's no good look for for the administration to even to acquiesce to anything that's been doing and try to paint this into any other light except this is terrible. I mean, he's a bloody dictator in this sense. I mean, he's going through this thing. He doesn't care about the citizens. I mean, some guys about, well, we've got the Donbas region, we've got the Russians there, we're trying to protect them. We've talked about they've had protests in Russia, which they've squelched. You saw that thing, I think, the other day about that Russian on TV, the woman coming up behind him.
Yeah. I mean, she basically said, I'm going to get killed and my family is going to get mistreated for a long time, but it's worth it. Right?
Yeah, that was that was a bold and brave move by that woman.
Yeah. Close to suicidal.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
it really is.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And the thing about it is, you were talking about Donbass, and the eastern part of Ukraine, the part that borders Russia, and there's all these Russian-speaking people in there, and so the pretext for doing this was, hey, we're just getting those Russian-speaking people into a country where they feel comfortable, right? They are fighting against Putin harder than anyone else, right? They're like, no, you leave us alone. We moved out of Russia for a reason, and we want to stay out of Russia. So, his pretext, I mean, I don't think he really cares, right, what anybody thinks of his pretext or his justification or whether he bombs civilians or any of that stuff. He's always been, immune to worrying about stuff like that. So, I don't think you're going to get very far with him. but they're not winning. They're not, they're bogged down in a lot of places. They have a lot of ordnance, right? So, and they're going to dump it all out. And he is doing this in a way, he's doing something similar to what the Germans did in World War II, where the bombing strategy is, and the U.S. uses some in North, bombing Hanoi, right? Remember, we used to bomb Hanoi every day. And that is, you're trying to drive down the will of the citizenry to oppose, right? So, by definition, your target is the citizens, right? It doesn't do you any good to bomb a military installation if you're trying to, convince the citizens this is a lost cause. So, and that's where he is now, is he's trying to change hearts and minds inside of Ukraine. And I don't think that's where this is going. I think that they have now set their jaw and decided they can oppose this, they can fight them off, and it's worth going for it.
Yeah, look, every day that this goes on is a day, is a victory for Ukraine, because they're standing up. So 3 million people may have fled. Lots of women and children and things like that, and so a lot of the elderly, for their safety. But what's really remarkable is the number of people who are trying to come back, especially the men. They want to come back. They want to join, these defense forces. They want to go out and fight. They're willing to risk their lives, even if they have families, to go out there and stand up and take a stand against Putin and stand up for their country. And, the bombing in that sense, has not really worked, because I think it's only kind of strengthened the resolve of the Ukrainian people to stand up against this aggression. This is naked aggression on Putin's part. And he is, I know we've mentioned this before, he has badly miscalculated this. He had no idea what he was getting into. And, I don't know when this is going to end, but every day is a better day for Ukrainians in that sense.
Right. And I think part of the problem in the United States is with, getting our minds right on what to do about this. There's two things. One is we are so trained to view the press as adversarial, right? And that, the fact that the press largely agrees with Biden on this, for a lot of people, is reason enough to oppose it. If the Democrat and the press are on the same side of something, it makes sense for me to be against it, right? Well, in most cases, that's exactly right. But in this case, not really. So you have to keep judging the cases. You have to keep doing the work of looking into these things. But, because the point is, like, a bad thing is getting done, and it is getting repelled. It's savable. It's doable. But we can't, be trying to justify and do it in that way.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this thing, but I noticed this. I think it was yesterday. I saw this somewhere, and about the administration using influencers to spread the message about the war. They had a briefing, like basically, I guess, a defense briefing, and they invited something like, what is it, like 40 social media influencers, TikTokers, and everything like that.
People with big TikTok accounts.
Yeah, and they did that, and it really, from as far as I could tell, this wasn't about to explain the whole situation and let them decide on their own. This was to basically push out the message that, we don't want a no-fly zone. We don't want, we don't want a war, and to please pass that on, in essence, to all your people, so that they build this movement against, all the people who say we've got to have a no-fly zone. We've got to press harder. The Biden administration is now using social media influencers to push out their opposite message, and pretty remarkable that they've got. But this is their way of kind of manipulating and influencing the press. Another method of doing it, because people watch these influencers, right, and they will follow them.
Right, and the other thing is like, you're starting to see some real chinks in the armor of the alliance between, the Biden administration and the media, right? That have his hit Biden 2-3 weeks. interesting thing to hear them say.
Yeah, I think
realize that a lot of what's going on here is not working, stuck. So this is the administration going around its usual sources of applause and praise to find even more, because the ones
we lost him again. Oh, there he comes back again.
And as Brent Bozell says, if the comics are cracking on you, then you're this is endemic in the society. You're not getting rid of it, right? I mean, that's these are the impressions of the American people, right? Once it's down to the level that we're joking about it on late night TV, then that impression has settled into America, and it can't really be changed, right? And what has been settled into America on this is incompetent administration. Did not do enough to keep us out of this, doesn't know how to get us out of this, doesn't know how to bring it to a resolution. Meanwhile, $5 gas, grocery prices through the roof. They don't seem to have any answers for that either.
All right. So what's your opinion about Russia, the reports that Russia was seeking China's help?
Well, I mean, I don't blame them. They're running out of material, and they're not rich, right? Like the United States can kind of just pour supplies into this thing until you can't stand it anymore. The Russians really can't. They really got to bring this to an end and get a victory. And they're starting to run out of some key stuff. And the Chinese are mostly like, hey, we're fine with running our mouth on your behalf, but we don't want to be. You're asking a little much now. So there's an end to the level of cooperation the Russians could expect from the Chinese, right?
Yeah, I mean,
we have sat here for canard from way back that the Russians get together with China, right? Because the Russians, the China, I mean, we look up as a big totalitarian monolith, right? But there are huge differences between So I expect them to not do a whole lot to help the Russians. To me, it's like, it's going to grind to a halt in that way. And I don't know that, I guess there's some interoperability there, but that's never been a design feature of either the Russian or Chinese military to be interoperable with the other one. Where, right, to be shared with allies and be shared with others. So
yeah. So the thing too is just, China's got its own issues. I mean, their economy's slowing. They're taking a very deep, hard look at Taiwan. I don't know if they want to get involved in this thing where, their interests aren't necessarily aligned with Russia at this point. And yeah, I think you're right in the sense of like, yeah, we'll talk and gab and whatever, but you may have gone a step too far if you think we're actually going to provide you, food, money, material, whatever.
Get you up the finish line here. That's right.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think that they're that interested in
that. Right. They got their own problems. They also, China is dealing with a COVID outbreak. Right, Hong Kong is the worst COVID hotspot in the world right now.
Yeah,
so they got their own problems that it's not like it was.
Yeah, that's for sure. So Zelensky, by the time the show airs, Zelensky will have spoken to the joint session of Congress. But he did speak to the Parliament yesterday in Canada, and he he tried to make it personal. I mean, he talked to, he was addressing Justin Trudeau on things, and he talked about a no-fly zone and some other things like that. I expect that he will do something similar today with our Congress, and maybe make a stronger case as to why we should step this up, why we should really think about this no-fly zone and stand up to Putin rather than just wait and watch more Ukraine, innocent civilians die at this point. So I don't know. I mean, Zelensky has proven to be remarkably resilient on his own, and for a comic turned politician, pretty surprising.
Yeah, he's done a pretty good job, all things considered.
That's right. That's for sure.
He would win if he ran for re-election right now.
And he was better than the guy he replaced too. So I mean, it's one of those things. I'd like you to explain to me.
I will say this though. So one of the things I want to make one point before we move on about this, and that is, the Heritage Foundation does an index of economic freedom every year, and as they have gone through the process of doing this year after year after year, they've refined it, right? What measurements really matter, and one of the measurements that's really grown in the importance, the weight, it's given in the weighting of the scores is. And you can respond in some way. Their thought, we're helping, we're throwing something onto a corrupt pie. That's fighting corruption at every level of government is always important because, it literally could be a matter of life and death. It literally can make you unable to accept help to survive, right? That's essentially what happened to South Vietnam is, we decided they were so corrupt, we couldn't give them anything else because it would be stolen or misappropriated or whatever. So we stepped away. The U.S. didn't lose that war. U.S. had held all the territory it was asked to hold. The war was lost when the U.S. left. Right, we left that behind a few people, and then we had to get them out at the end. But who lost that war was the corruption of the Republic of South Vietnam government.
All right, so I wanted to get your quick reaction or thoughts about Tulsi Gabbard, who a lot of conservatives, had kind of taken a shine to and everything like that. But she's been saying some things lately that are like, I don't know, kind of head scratching. I don't know what to do about her.
I'm trying to figure out what her game is because she can't run as a Republican, and she's at the point now where she really can't run as a Democrat. I think that she's like Kinzinger and those guys, and they imagine that there's some big phalanx of people who like George W. Bush is their political hero, right? That sort of centrist. Big spend, big military presence, trade deals, completely free trade, no matter how bad it hurts us. Republicanism, we don't kind of stay out of social issues because we don't do that good on that, whatever. Don't make the other side angry type of republicanism. And, there's virtually no audience for it, right? At this point, the Democrats certainly don't want it. And Republicans have moved on. We're a different party now. We are, even if you don't like Trump or you want to explore these other options, that is that's the battleground. It's like, it's going to be whoever it is going to be somewhat Trump-like because, we're done with the Bushes and the, kowtowing and getting beat.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, but
I'm trying to figure out what's her move. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she mentions this bio lab, in Ukraine, trying to give some justification for Putin to invade, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Especially, I mean, I think she'd actually done a halfway decent job of establishing some street cred for some conservatives or at least some Republicans. and then she says this, and this goes against the grain of anything that people really are willing or probably willing to swallow or believe in, and then begin to think, okay, well, maybe she's not quite so together after all. Yeah. Well, what her game is, I mean, if she was trying to get some influence from some Republicans and things like that, you can lose it pretty fast with these kind of remarks that she's making during the war, which just don't really make a whole lot of sense.
And she's anti-gun. We're not going to vote for her. You know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's too much there.
Yeah, I mean, her dad was a leading proponent of fighting back these gay agenda things in Hawaii. So he was extremely conservative and everything like that. So she has a background of the family coming from some of those things. And so I don't know that she was, I don't think she was ever really a super liberal Democrat overall. She had she had those conservative upbringing type of things that I think still were part of her and everything. But we'll continue to watch Tulsi. She's going to be an interesting person to watch.
There may be at some point, just because that formula doesn't work now doesn't mean it couldn't work in the future, right? It may be 10, 15 years from now, the landscape is a lot more favorable to what she's doing.
Right. All right. So we see that the president is still trying to blame Putin for inflation, and spending, both Biden and Pelosi. I mean, they were trying to say that the government spending, doesn't increase inflation. It's actually it's a good thing. And no one really in the press really covers this. They don't really talk about. It's like, don't you understand economics? I mean, do you not see the inflationary pressure brought on by all this government spending? Are you totally blind?
Yeah. By being 125% of GDP, you don't think that makes a difference? I mean, it's not, it's not sustainable behavior in the bond markets and so forth, because people realize that for real, we're in a little bit over our heads now. It's rescuable, it's dealable, but the response to the Democrats is, suffer a little bit, things will get better, don't worry about it, right? They're not going to try to fix it. They're not going to try to fix energy prices. They don't, it seems like a huge political liability to me, to us. It's like, everybody, it's something everyone can see, but their thing is like, you just don't understand, how good the economy is really doing. It's just an education thing. It's just, you don't understand the insides of this. It's like the insides of Americans judging the state of the economy, is like, what does it cost me to go to the grocery store? What does it cost me to go to the gas station? Right. That's the two things we really want to know. So, I don't know. I just don't know how we get there from what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to explain to my wife, because she's like, on inflation, she's like, I think they're lying. Because she looks at certain things that she buys, right? And says, that's way more than 7.9%, inflation. I said, well, it's an average of things, and you've got some are up a heck of a lot, others are not as quite as much, and the government they've got their basket and they've got their formulas and whatever, and that's why they say I think the producer level is a little more accurate because of that, and that's still high. That was like over 6. So we're still dealing with all this inflation. But you go to the store.
I saw the other day the old formula for calculating inflation, the ones that we did in the last, up until like 5 years ago, inflation right now would be 15%, which makes more sense to what your wife's talking about. Like the goods, when you actually pick up a product in the store and look at it to buy it, it's 15%. It's not 7. I don't know what's bringing the average down to 7, right? Because in the store, the prices in the store are more than 7% higher.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, so being very Asian in this household, there's a pretty fair amount of rice consumed, though I've tried to cut back on my rice consumption, but we still buy a fair amount of rice. And we were over at Costco yesterday, and they do sell a Japanese branded rice when they can get it. But she was looking at that thing and she says, look at that. She says, it's like $29 a bag for, I think it's a 40-pound bag. She said, that used to be $21.
Yeah.
That's 40%.
Yeah.
The rice is up 40%. For a lot of families, right? Rice and beans, that's what a lot of people eat.
Right.
I mean, that was considered like the cheap food.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if rice is going up 40%, the people on the lower end of the economic scale who were using that to sustain themselves, they can't sustain themselves on this.
That's right.
It's impossible. And then there's a jasmine rice that she likes to buy to make this other fried rice. She can't even find it in places in a lot of cases. It's coming from Thailand. I mean, there are things that you want to eat or want to do you can't get, and then the other things have just skyrocketed. I say the only thing that hasn't been affected by inflation so far I can see is the $4.99 rotisserie chicken and the $1.50 hot dog and Pepsi at Costco. And everything like this. I mean,
those were always lost.
Right. it's the biggest loss leader in the history of loss leaders at this point. But I was listening to the 538 podcast, and they were talking about inflation and gas and stuff like this. And Nate Silver was mentioning, I think he's a professional poker player, basically. And he's very good at it. So he goes off on these long jaunts and spends a lot of time in Vegas playing poker, and I guess winning a pretty good amount of money. But he was mentioning he says, talk about inflation. He says he got a slice of pizza. It was $8.29 for that one slice of pizza.
That's some good pizza there. It better be.
And that's the kind of thing. I mean, you and me, the average American, I mean, we go to the grocery store and it's just like, we don't really know what we're paying anymore. And even if the price hasn't risen, check the quantity, right? Then you have that shrinkage issue, right? The diapers, there are fewer M&Ms in a box or whatever. Just everything. What was that? Burger King was saying, their 10-piece nuggets are now 8-piece nuggets, right? Same price, 2 fewer nuggets, and those are the ways they're trying to deal with it to try to keep the pricing from getting out of whack. Is that they reduce the quantity, hoping that people really won't notice as much, because seeing that people are price sensitive more than they are the quantity side. But yeah, we're seeing the biggest wave of this than we've seen in years. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and stuff the thing about it is like people who are half our age, right? They've never seen this. They have no idea what's going on. They have no historical context of it at all. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, my kids are all adult age, but they have never lived through anything like this. Yeah. They've never seen this. And now they're out on their own, and it's big sticker shock for them, to go through all of this. All right, 2 minutes or last word.
So, see what was on here. We are glad to see the old baseball get it all worked out. And guess we're going to start a little bit late, but they're going to schedule some double headers and try to make up all the games. So you'll play the whole 162 games. I think that the Senate, God bless Joe Manchin, who's saving America right now. He did it the other day. Did not want to put Sarah Bloom Raskin on the Fed, right? Who wants to basically turn it into the global warming position. Those people should not be in government at all. They are irresponsibly wacky, and a good thing happened there that she was kept off.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I'm glad that we're playing ball. It'll be very interesting. I mean, the interesting things that are going on there, we're seeing right in the free agent market. We're also seeing these vax rules that will, that could prevent some players from playing in Canada and potentially in New York, depending upon what the restrictions are.
I'd hate it if the Yankees and Mets had problems like that. I would.
Yeah, big sadness. I want to know where Freddie Freeman is going. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and Carlos Correa, who the Astros are making another run at.
Yeah, I mean,
so Buster only news in the next day or so.
Yeah, they're
checking my Twitter. What's going on? Come on, Carlos. And it's funny because the catcher is hanging out with him every day, trying to talk him into doing it. Right. So every day the catcher will put out some cryptic tweet, talking business with Carlos. Like, come on, man, put a pen in Carlos's hand, force it down on the contract, get this done. So
I heard Buster Olney was saying that he thought it would be plausible for him to return for one more season and then go back out on the free agent market.
yeah, that could happen too. He turned down the qualifying offer, but he could go back for one season. That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about over there.
Yeah. So anyway, and then just one comment about Tom Brady. I mean, and it's not about him retiring as much as the fact that I have to go and look about the story about whatever happened to the person who won the bidding that spent $518,000 for Tom Brady's last NFL touchdown ball.
Oh, that's right.
I wanted to go look and see whether or not the auction, whether or not the auction gets canceled as a result of that, because you could say that, it's worthless in that sense. And, they kind of gave him under somewhat false pretenses. They thought it was, and then he does, Brady never did say he was going to retire. He never used that word. Right. So, but yeah, you spend $518,000 and you're like, now what? Now do I go back to whoever was the auctioneer and say, cancel that? It's like, it's no longer what I bought. Right. So,
and one last thing. Mike McConaughey retired this week. Mike McConaughey, you probably never heard of him. He's been the coach he's the winningest college coach ever in Louisiana. He's been the coach at Northwestern State for 23 years. Before that, he was at Bossier Parish Community College, where he had them in the national tournament every year. This is a guy who, you're at a school where it's hard to be, you don't have the resources to be hugely successful anyway, but the whole community embraces the programs, and, he embraced the community. He had his church involved with his team. He had his players out doing community service. He made good human beings for 23 years, and he had some big wins. They, I don't know if you remember this, but they dumped Iowa one time years ago when Steve Alford was the coach there, beat him on a last-second three. It's probably the best, basketball moment the school's ever had. So enjoy your retirement, Mike McConaughey, North Louisiana legend.
Good note to end on. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us again this week. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And then God bless America, and we'll see you again next week.